Hey guys, what's up? My name's Ines. I write kissing books, and this is the Valkyrie's Claim, Chapter 7. Reagan had no idea her body could do that, boil up like a volcano and explode. Tremors racked her body, and they hadn't done the actual fucking yet. Draco brought her down so that her hips settled over his. The core of her still throbbed with aftershocks when she sat down on his hard rod. For a moment, she wasn't sure if she could take more. She quickly tossed that worry away. She wanted all of him, every bit he had to offer. And boy, oh boy, was there a hefty offering waiting between her thighs. Reagan lifted her hips, sliding her entrance over the thick head of his cock. Draco's large hands came onto either side of her hips and halted her downward progress. Reagan flashed her eyes at him. She knew that technically the cock was his, and she had asked to play with it. Sharing, in her world, which was filled with powerful, unflinching women, amounted to taking what one wanted and asking for forgiveness later, or fighting it out. Reagan was prepared to fight the dragon to get his member inside her. Are you denying me, dragon? No. Draco's grin was sheepish, embarrassed. Before that moment, Reagan had only seen him as a tool for her use, but with that self-deprecating smile, something shifted inside her. She saw him as, well, a person. Draco was laid out beneath her like an offering. His chest was a sculpted mass of twin peaks. His abdomen was a valley of ridges and ripples. At some point, while or after he was licking her, he divested himself of his pants. Dark hair curled around a massive erection that should have given Reagan pause. Problem was, she didn't want to pause. It's just. His hand reached up to her face. Reagan flinched, but she didn't move beyond his reach. His fingers brushed her cheeks in a soft caress. It was almost reverent. Forgive me, he whispered, but I don't know your name. My name? I'd like to know whose name to scream when I'm in the throes of passion. He grinned at that, the devil returning to the spark in his green eyes, showing that his beast was near the surface. His words took Reagan aback. She knew that men enjoyed the sexual act, often more than the women they were partnered with. There was no dispute that Draco had pleasured her senseless with that one act. It had never occurred to her that she could give a man pleasure. Reagan. My name is Reagan. Draco repeated her name. He trilled the R and softened the G. The sound of her name on his lips brought pleasure. The man was truly gifted. Her gaze slipped to his neck. Again, her incisors watered. The urge to bite, to mark, to claim came over her. That trance was broken when she felt the head of his cock breach her tight sheath. Reagan gasped. Her claws dug into the flesh of his chest. Her thighs trembled at the invasion. Instead of taking it slow, she was eager to march full speed ahead like the warrior that she was. And so, Reagan pushed her hips down. Instead of pleasure, she met with resistance and pain. Easy there, love. Draco lifted her hips, but he did not lift her off him. Let's take it easy, inch by inch. You have a lot of inches. There it was again, that impish grin. I intend to give you every last one, but in due time. He reached for her face again. This time he cupped her chin in his hand. His fiery gaze was on her lips. May I kiss you again, Reagan? She liked that he asked. He had her in a vulnerable position, naked, splayed over him, and yet he asked her permission. Reagan nodded. She leaned in to reach his lips, but Draco had already ducked his head. His tongue met the nipple of her right breast. Reagan arched her back at the sensation. The move brought her breast deeper into Draco's mouth. It also dropped her hips down another inch on his stiff rod. The triple sensation sent an explosion of seismic proportions through her body, and her core clenched. This time, the clenching happened around a stiff rod and not an empty channel. Her body behaved like a siphon, sucking him deeper into her channel. The way became easy as her intimate wetness filled up between the two of them. As the orgasm raged on, her intimate passage continued its suction until she was fully seated on his erection. All the while, Draco murmured around her breast, "By the goddess, you're the sweetest thing I've ever tasted. You're like velvet in my hands, love. Never wanted anything so much. That's it, love. Take it. Take all of me." It was the last plea that made her do it. Her mind was a haze from the strength of the orgasm. She threw back her head, her incisors sharp, then struck, biting down on his neck. Draco's growl reverberated through her body, coaxing another orgasm. She felt his body tremble inside hers. His hard cock grew thicker. She was being filled with a warm wetness. When he pulled back to look at her, he looked dazed. Blood trickled down from his shoulder. She tasted the metallic tint of it on her tongue. She knew she should be ashamed at what she'd done. But all that came over her was a feeling of rightness. All that kept going through her head was the single word, mine. Stay tuned for Chapter 8.